You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth, the show that is honest, reveals the facts, truth, and statistics, and does not mess around. Follow me, Taylor Phillips, on Twitter at DT2Phillips. Email me at TaylorGatorPhillips14@yahoo.com. Follow Ed Smith on Twitter at EdSmith313, and go to our website at MichiganSportsTruth.com. Also like our Facebook page, The Michigan Sports Truth on Spreaker, and join our group with the exact same name. The Michigan Sports Truth podcast is also available on iHeartRadio and SoundCloud. Also a subsidiary of Sports Radio Detroit, thus available on iTunes and Podbean. The views expressed by the host of this podcast are not opinion-based or for entertainment purposes. They are actually facts and truth, no matter if other people like it or not. It is the Michigan Sports Truth, and nothing can ever stop it from being correct.
Hey there, Michigan sports fanatics, and welcome to episode 226 of the Michigan Sports Truth on Spreaker. This is the football preview in the Mitten edition. I'm Taylor Phillips with my co-host Ed Smith. Thanks so much for being on here with me, Ed. How are you?
Doing quite fine, Taylor. I am feeling a bit better than I was feeling earlier today watching that atrocity that took place at American Park. Don't worry, folks. We have plenty to talk about the Tigers on this upcoming Tuesday night's regular edition of our show. But for tonight, since we're near the weekend, it's all football all day.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Before we begin, I want to remind everyone to share this episode and our entire podcast on social media. Have their friends share that as well. And follow me on Spreaker as Taylor Phillips online at www.spreaker.com, because I want to tell them that the Michigan Sports Truth podcast on here on Spreaker is in search of local advertising sponsors. If anyone has a business that's interested in sponsoring this program, please email me at TaylorGatorPhillips14@yahoo.com or privately message me on Facebook or Twitter. You can also follow Sports Radio Detroit on Twitter at Sports Radio Det and like their Facebook page and join their group on Facebook. Find their podcasts available on iTunes and Podbean. We're going to preview Michigan versus Colorado, Michigan State at Notre Dame. Central Michigan versus UNLV, and the Titans at the Lions. Week 2 of the NFL and week 3 in college football. First off, let's start off with the 4th-ranked Michigan Wolverines.
Touchdown, Michigan!
Let me see here. The Wolverines, as we mentioned earlier this week, have a 3-1 record all-time against the Colorado Buffaloes, with the largest margin of victory being 31-0 in 1974. The last meeting between the two schools came in 1997 when Michigan opened its national championship season with a 27-3 victory over Colorado at Michigan Stadium in Ann Arbor at the Big House. They play the Buffaloes at the Big House again this Saturday at 3:30, and it's televised on BTN. Looking at the matchups here, Michigan has a very historical advantage over Colorado, despite that very devastating upset loss in 1994 on that Hail Mary. But since then, they have won 2 straight against those Buffaloes. And going forward to this season, where they're 2-0, they have combined for 114 points in their first 2 games of the season, the 4th most in program history through 2 contests. It is the 11th time U of M has surpassed 100 or more points in the first 2 games, and the first time since 2013. The last time U of M had back-to-back 50-plus point games was in 1992. Now, some key matchups here. The Wolverine, looking at the defense first, they have allowed just one red zone opportunity through 2 games, but have not yielded a score over 1 that actually resulted in a field goal. But the defense has tallied 20 tackles for loss and 7 sacks so far this season. They've recovered 2 fumbles this season, which already equaled its total of recoveries from all of last season. And their passing defense lists among the nation's best, allowing 103.5 yards per contest, which is ranked 9th, and a pass efficiency rating of 69.75, which is ranked 6th in the nation. And they've allowed the opposition to convert just 12% of its third down chances, 3 out of 25, which leads the Big Ten and is 3rd nationally. Offensively,
not to mention the fact that they also have a pair of pick sixes on their resume as well. Both of those occurred in Week 1 against Hawaii.
Oh yeah, 63-3, no kidding. Speaking of which, the offense has not committed a penalty through 2 games of action, 82 offensive plays against UCF, and 59 snaps against Hawaii. Rack them all up.
Hey, say what you want about how they got that, but when you go through 2 full games against any opponent, you don't commit a single penalty. It is at least some sense a show of good discipline. Now, granted, if they get more worthy opponent that could induce more emotional responses on certain actions, certain plays, that's another thing. But still, through 2 full games, one of which you featured over 80 offensive snaps, they have not a single offensive penalty so far. It's quite impressive, to say the least.
Oh yeah, they committed only 1 turnover in the first 2 games totally, and that was on the first snap of the 2016 season. When Wilton Spate threw an interception, but since then they've scored touchdowns on 7 straight offensive possessions against Hawaii, and they are 13 of 14 on red zone chances this season with 10 touchdowns and only 3 field goals. The only non-score came when U of M ended the game inside UCF's 20-yard line. They scored 6 touchdowns on their 6 red zone opportunities against Hawaii and scored 4 touchdowns and 3 field goals against UCF. That adds up to the 10 touchdowns and 3 field goals. Passing-wise, or actually third down-wise, they've converted 60% on third down, 15 out of 25, and they've been a perfect 7 for 7 on third down opportunities against Hawaii and went 8 for 18 against UCF. So you see, if you look at it as a graph, Michigan was perfect against Hawaii, but wasn't perfect against UCF. And when we don't expect Michigan to be perfect, Hawaii's defense just flat out stunk. Central Florida's offense on third down was just a little bit better, but they still couldn't hold Michigan, who pounded them for 51 points compared to the 63 that they pounded on Hawaii.
And not to mention the fact that to make up for certain inequities that Michigan probably was not to use themselves last week, they made up for that in terms of the special teams department with a pair of, some would say, either blocked or definitely deflected, in a sense, punts, 2 punts in that instance, as well as 2 blocked field goals. So, even if one aspect of the game isn't quite right, Michigan is able to back that up with a different way of how to win the games by implementing and converting in other facets of the game.
Oh yeah. Also, U of M's quarterbacks have completed 72% of their passes through 2 games, 44 of 61, 3 signal callers completed 85% of their passing attempts against Hawaii, 17 of 20, and completed 66% against UCF, 27 out of 41. Michigan had 15 players carry the football and 15 players catch passes through 2 games. The offense needs 41 yards to reach 1,000 on the season, and has gained 425 rushing yards and 534 passing yards. Special teams. Before we get to the matchup here, Michigan, just 3 notes here. Michigan has converted on all 3 field goal attempts and each of the 15 PATs. 10 of the team's 20 kickoffs have been down for touchbacks. Jabril Peppers lists 7th nationally and tops in the Big Ten with an 18.5 yard average per punt return. Wow. 7th. So going forward here, the U of M versus Pacific 12. Colorado is a Pac-12 team. Michigan has completed a 49-26-1 record against teams that currently compete in the Pac-12. In 1901, the Wolverines played their first game against Stanford, a Pac-12 team, grounding them 49-0. They've also held undefeated marks against Washington State and Oregon State, 4-0 and 5-0. And this will be the first time that Michigan faces Colorado since the school joined the Pac-12. Now, their quarterback right now, Wilton Spate, was named the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week, despite his interception on the first snap of the season, after setting career highs in every passing category against UCF. Michigan is 9th nationally and 2nd in the Big Ten in scoring defense, allowing 8.5 points per contest. And they ranked in the NCAA's top 10 of 7 defensive categories, and they are converting 60% on third downs, ranking 6th nationally. Now, the key matchups here. Ed, people want to know, how does Michigan's offense match up with Colorado's defense, and how does Michigan's defense match up with Colorado's offense?
Well, in terms of comparing both teams offensively, defensively, or how they match up against one another, with Michigan, I guess you can match it or grade upon the caliber of opponents that both teams have faced. Admittedly, both opponents for both teams have been very, very poor. You can call them borderline FCS, not FBS, with the teams that they faced. Colorado has faced Colorado State and Idaho State, whereas Michigan has faced Hawaii and UCF. Both of them with easily impressive victories, but I think it's going to be a much better difference in terms of what Colorado will be facing when they step foot in the Big House this Saturday. They have put up 44 points and 56 points in their past 2 games. I doubt that's going to happen. You're facing one of the absolute top defenses, period, in the country. A stout defensive line, outstanding secondary, even though they're missing some parts from their senior class linebackers from last year. But still, you have a great defensive line and a great secondary. The linebacker is almost very moot at this point. So defensively, Colorado will have a tough task in terms of trying to get the ball past the second level, let alone getting up and down the field against a very, very stout Michigan defense. So advantage Michigan on that point. Whereas offensively, really what it comes down to, what Michigan, it seems to have, they have their weapons. They have their wideouts, they have their tight ends, even have legend of fullbacks or H-backs if needed. Wilton Spade looks like a type of player that if he stays on his groove, even though this is his first year start and all that, and he's a young kid as well, but if he seems to control and manage the game as well as he did, like some minimal mistakes, they're expected, but as long as they're few and far in between, I'm not going to say he's going to be exactly what Jake Rudock was, except this time will be all year. I reckon he's sitting pretty close. You've seen he has a great ability to go a great deep ball. He's able to read some of his players well. He's not always staring down certain targets. He's finding a way to share the ball around with his multitude of weapons, whether it be Darboh, Amara Darboh, Jay Chesson, or Jake Butt. He also manages every once in a while use his own parade, use his length, use his size to scramble a little bit, extend the play a little bit, and in some instances maybe scramble a little bit and use that size to his advantage, helping get some extra yards on certain scramble and broken plays. Really, the key thing for Michigan that they need to focus on in terms of improving, especially as we get closer to start a conference schedule, and then of course later in the year, whatnot. But Michigan needs to really complete themselves as a whole and make them look like a very serious team for possible not just Big Ten title contention, but also playoff contention and national title contention as well. They need to really make round improvements on their running game, hard to punt. Even though in terms of yard total, it seems almost neck and neck with the passing total so far. If you look at the eye test, Michigan's running game has not looked that solid. And granted, reminder, you're going to get two essential cupcakes against Hawaii and UCF. If you don't have an impressive running game against those two, it's going to look kind of weird, or it will be looking very worrisome. And probably if you're a Michigan fan, seeing that if they don't improve upon that when they go into the Big Ten conference schedule, how is that going to look against the likes of Michigan State or Ohio State in terms of teams with far better run defenses than the teams that you're facing right now with your non-conference schedule, or even some parts of your conference schedule, some of the weaker teams like the Rutgers or Illinois or any of that sort. So the key throughout this whole season for Michigan in terms of leading up to their big games at Michigan State, at Iowa, and at Ohio State, they need to have a full 180 in terms of production and cohesiveness of their running game. That just seems to be the only thing that's missing from them to show how complete of a team they are. Because they seem to have every facet of the game down, all phases, offense, defense, and even special teams to a certain extent. They just need to really crack down on their running game. And, this will be another good test because I think it's safe to say Colorado will be a much sterner, much tougher team in terms of what you have faced so far. I'm not calling them a true test like would say Michigan State, Iowa, Ohio State, but still much better competition than you would have been facing for the past 2 weeks, so to speak, and possibly even for the early part, from now until Ohio State. Some might say Penn State or Wisconsin, but that's still yet to be seen in my view. So for Michigan, it comes down to can they establish a running game, and so can they be consistent with it as we move forward throughout this schedule throughout this season. So defense, they're fine. Offense, they need to set up a running game. And in terms of intangibles, I think they've got enough motivation, per se, because remember, Colorado is trying to, I understand they're the underdogs and they're trying to, go in with a nothing to lose attitude, but you got to be quite careful because they've stated, that they more than likely will wear throwback uniforms that match the style to commemorate the 1994 team with Cordell Stewart and Michael Westbrook that went into the big house and shot the Wolverines on the final play of the game with a Hail Mary. Not mention that, they've also, leading up to this game, posted a mock depth chart of what Michigan will be starting with, including, and I quote, Elmer Fudd at quarterback. So I understand having a little bit of fun and trying to come in with a lackadaisical attitude, especially when folks are coming you out to begin with. But, you don't want to be getting too much of a motivation to the other side because, they can take that personally, especially against a guy like Jim Harbaugh. I'm sure, if you poke the bear the wrong way, you'll get back claws and teeth in the wrong way.
And do we have an injury report? I don't think I've heard of any injuries over the week since Saturday.
Yeah, well, it is intriguing to note that Jordan Lewis has yet to play yet in this season. He was ruled out last week for UCF just as he was against Hawaii. I guess Jim Harbaugh mentioned in a press conference, I think this week, that he wants Jordan to take his time getting back to fully 100% as much as possible. So I wouldn't be too surprised if Lewis sits this game out as well. But I'd reckon, if not next week, but definitely for week one of the conference schedule, we'll see Lewis back in uniform for sure. So there's nothing too worrisome to fret about in that manner.
All right, well, how about the prediction? I'll let you go first.
Michigan will win. Yeah, I'm going to say Michigan's going to win. The spread is 20. They'll cover that easily. Over is 56. I'm going to take the over. The only thing to look out for is, can Michigan find a way to establish, a better production with their running game? That's really the only thing you need to be looking at, as well as also how Wilton State will continue to grow and mature throughout this entire season. So that's two big things to look at from Michigan's perspective. Wilton State's development and development of a running game.
All right. Did you say the score or?
Well, I can't really predict score per se because I don't know exactly how it's going to go. But I do think that Michigan will more than cover the spread. The spread is right now is at 20. So Michigan's favored by 20. I think they're going to do more than well in that regard. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I'm going to predict Michigan 41, Colorado 17.
Seems a reasonable score. I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan's defense actually holds Colorado like under to 14 or under. So but we'll see what happens in that manner.
All right. Now on to the Michigan State Spartans.
Touchdown, MSU!
They go to South Bend, Indiana, and play the Notre Dame Fighting Irish for the first time since September 21st, 2013. That was when Michigan State won its first Rose Bowl since the 80s. That was in that season. But in that matchup, Notre Dame previously won 17-13 in South Bend. Notre Dame leads at the all-time series 48-28-1. Michigan State ranks second among opponents in all-time victories, 28 over Notre Dame. Only USC, with 36, has posted more wins over the Irish than the Spartans. This fall marks the 50th anniversary of the famous game of the century, a 10-10 tie between number 1 Notre Dame and number 2 Michigan State on November 19th, 1966 in Spartan Stadium in East Lansing. 31 players from that game went on to play in the NFL, including 10 first-round draft picks. Now, we all should recall that the Michigan State-Notre Dame series began 119 years ago in 1897, making it one of the 27 oldest rivalries in college football. It also ranks it as one of only 3 rivalries, joining Army, Navy, and Auburn, Georgia Tech, that does not involve either intrastate or current conference rivals. Now for the quick glance at Notre Dame, according to MSUSpartans.com. Notre Dame is 1-1 on the season after defeating Nevada 39-10 on September 10th to bounce back from a 50-47 double overtime loss at the Texas Longhorns on September 4th in Week 1. The Fighting Irish returned 3 offensive and 5 defensive starters as part of 43 letter winners, returning from last season's 10-3 team that finishing number 11 in the AP poll and number 12 in the Amway coaches poll. The Irish are averaging 222.5 yards per game rushing offense to rank 38th in the NCAA, while tallying 221.5 yards per game passing offense, amassing 444 yards flat per game total offense. The Irish are 23rd in the nation in team passing efficiency, 165.46, as well as 28th in scoring offense, 43 flat points per game. The Irish are tied for 47th in third down conversions, third down conversion percentage, 0.452. Their special teams are ninth in the NCAA in punt returns, 22.5 yards per return, while averaging 19.9 yards per returns on kick returns. The Irish averaged 37.9 yards per punt. Junior quarterback Deshaun Kaiser is fifth in the NCAA in passing efficiency, 195.9 on 30 of 42 passing for 371 yards, 185.5 yards per game, with 7 touchdowns and 1 interception this season, adding 112 rushing yards on quarterback keepers, 56.0 yards per game, with 2 rushing touchdowns. Kaiser's 7 passing touchdowns are tied for sixth in the nation, while his 714 passing completion percentage is 15th. Sophomore wide receiver Equanimous St. Brown, that's a new name, has 11 catches for 160 yards with 2 touchdowns on the season, averaging 5.5 receptions for 80 yards per game, 80 flat yards per game. Fellow sophomore C.J. Sanders has 8 receptions for 101 yards with 2 touchdowns through 2 games for an average of 4 catches for 50.5 yards per game. Sanders is also fourth in the nation in punt return average with 25 yards per return, as well as 51st in kick return average at 22.4 yards per return. Sanders is 38th in the country in all-purpose yards with 144 flat yards per game. Senior Torrey Hunter Jr., not to be confused with former Detroit Tigers outfielder Torrey Hunter, who is retired now, so forget that. Senior Torrey Hunter Jr. for Notre Dame had 4 catches for 37 yards and 1 touchdown in the Texas game before suffering an injury late in the game. He did not play versus Nevada. There's an injury report right. There's a part of the injury report right there. And sophomore Josh Adams leads the. Yeah.
Yeah, easy to tell and easy to diagnose when he more than likely suffered a concussion. So it's been a week. He's had a week of rest. I'm not. What is the update? Has he been given the clear to given clearance to play this week, or anything possibly preventing that?
Oh, what was that again?
Is there anything possibly preventing Torrey Hunter Jr.'s return to play this weekend? Was he giving full clearance, medically cleared to play? Considering he more than likely suffered a concussion 2 weeks ago.
Man, I have not gotten word from Bleacher Report in any notifications on my phone, but we'll have to see about it.
Yeah, keep an eye on that. That could be a quite developing story that could help MSU out in a sense.
That's right. Yep. Continuing on here, sophomore Josh Adams leads the Irish ground attack with 149 yards on 21 rushing attempts on the season, averaging 74.5 yards per game and 7.1 yards per carry. Senior Terrain Falston adds 115 yards on 28 carries, 57.5 yards per game, and 4.1 yards per carry with 1 touchdown. Junior linebacker Niles Morgan anchors the Notre Dame defense, logging 17 tackles through 2 games, 8.5 tackles per game, with a half tackle for loss. Senior defensive lineman Isaac Rochelle adds 14 total tackles 7 per game, with 3 tackles for loss, including 2.5 tackles for loss against the Texas Longhorns. And finally, sophomore kicker Justin Yoon is 10 of 11 on PATs and 2 of 3 on field goals. So he's indicating that he's not terrible, but showing he's not perfect already. But with a long field goal, the longest of 39 yards. Junior punter Tyler Newsome has 12 punts for 492 yards for an average of 41.1 yards per punt, with a long of 53 yards and 4 inside the 20-yard line. So, pending what we've read here on this source from MSUSpartans.com, by the way, we credit mgoblue.com for what I've read from the Michigan-Colorado series and their history and whatnot. But the Spartans and the Irish, the key matchups we're looking at. How does Notre Dame's offense and defense match up with and special teams match up with Michigan State's offense, defense, and special teams?
Well, I think Notre Dame will have a much better time on defense facing Michigan State than they would have a couple weeks ago against Texas. Because I think what Texas has is quite unique. They have the 2-quarterback system. One that Notre Dame was actually trying to experiment with their own before discovering great plays from Kaiser and decided to stick with him over Zaire, the other quarterback that was part of the 2 QB system. But what they were facing with Texas was a much better executed version. You had Shane Buechele, the freshman, has a heck of an arm, by the way. He can throw almost 60, 70 yards almost on a given. So factor that in, and there's also especially when you get close to the red zone, took him out, brought in Swoops, the other QB, Tyron Swoops, by the way, that's his name. Think of him as like a young Vince Young, but not with a good arm, essentially. He was used to help establish a running game, especially when he close to the red zone. And in fact, it was Swoops himself who scored the winning touchdown in second overtime to ice the upset against the Irish. So Notre Dame, they won't have any worries about facing any of that against Michigan State. Michigan State doesn't have nowhere near that type of a dynamic or threatening offense. First and foremost, their quarterback, Tyler Connor, it's far different from so far at least from what MSU has seen from Connor Cook and before him for Cousins in terms of quarterbacks that seem to know their role, do well enough, and from the eventual results find themselves playing on Sundays in the NFL. You don't see that quite yet out of O'Connor. However, you do see that out of Kaiser, who has great throwing ability, dynamic athleticism to use his legs to make plays or get out of plays that seem bad and make it positive. Very strong body. I would say if you could picture Russell Wilson and add about 5 to 6 more inches of height, you would get Kaiser for Notre Dame. He's just that good of an athlete. A guy definitely see playing on Sundays in the very near future. That's the advantage that Notre Dame has right there. So again, the defense won't have to worry about getting shredded by MSU. First and foremost, they don't have that the quarterback doesn't seem to be quite as developed as of yet compared to what season finished products that they got out of Cousins and Cook, respectively. Two, by the way, in terms of offensively, Michael Lenny brought this up and as part of a good point on his radio show this week, which you can listen to on 97.1 The Ticket, weekdays 2 to 6. He mentions how he really doesn't like how, in some instances, unless you have a quarterback that can cover those weaknesses, he really does not trust MSU's offensive coordinator. The one before, I can't remember his name at the moment, but I knew the one before him was Dan Rochar. The one currently at the moment, Taylor, if you can look that up for me, everyone else sure knows his name. His name is blanking out in my mind for a reason. But essentially, play calling, or doesn't trust him using the right tempo, or just simple basic plays, or try to mix things up rather. Tries to be too basic, or every once in a while, once that figures out, tries to get too cute with a trick play out of nowhere, something like that. So that's another factor that could be a bit of a detriment against Michigan State. One thing that I mentioned that could help them out is that, the status of Corey Hunter Jr. If he's not clear to play, that could help out MSU. Not too much, but at least a little bit, because it does take away a good weapon from Notre Dame. And of course, these MSU can possibly load up more people in the box on defense to go over and try to slow down Kaiser. So again, and another thing here too, is a little bit of a mystery element here. We really don't know what MSU looks like. I mean, they are ranked 12th in the nation, but they had a bit of some would say a moderate struggle against Furman of all teams, but came back, won that game. And they haven't played since. They had a bye week last week, so that mystery element plays into how, you really don't know how they can perform, how they will perform. Pretty much know how Notre Dame will perform. We just don't know how Michigan State will look. So that's the only thing. That's another big intriguing element in terms of previewing and breaking down what this game is going to look like.
So, Ed, what did you want me to look up again?
MSU's current offensive coordinator.
Yeah, offensive coordinator. Yeah, I'm looking at it. I'm looking into the roster right now. The offensive coordinator. There's a co-offensive coordinator and tight ends coach, Jim Bowman, Dave Warner, the co-offensive coordinator, the running backs.
Yeah, Warner. That's who Valenti was talking about, Dave Warner.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks for that, Taylor.
Yep, you're welcome. So it all boils down to the prediction. Tyler O'Connor, having not much experience after not even especially especially last year when Connor Cook was the number one quarterback. Tyler O'Connor didn't get much experience. Now he's the number one quarterback as a fifth-year senior, and the Spartans only scored 28 points against Furman. Now, granted, they won 28-13 2 weeks ago, but that was at home. But their offense needs a lot of work.
Definitely from a play calling perspective and just from a flat out talent perspective, and certain instances.
Yeah, and to compare between Tyler O'Connor and Deshaun Kaiser, the junior quarterback of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, like I mentioned, Kaiser is fifth in the NCAA in passing efficiency, ranked fifth in passing efficiency, 195.9 on 30 of 42 passing for 371 yards. 7 touchdowns and just 1 interception. I believe Tyler Connor has thrown at least 1 interception too, but Kaiser has, with all those statistics, has outranked Connor. I think it'll come down to the offensive game. I think that Notre Dame's going to come out on top by a score of like 34-25.
Well, ND is favored by 8. I think that's a reasonable spread. I think that's a reasonable line for the game. I think MSU, based mainly on their defense, they'll try to play. They'll overachieve a little bit, but in the end, Notre Dame, first and foremost, way better quarterback play. 2, at-home primetime game in South Bend. 3, this is their first chance at national. This is their first big national exposure, so to speak, since the Texas game. So this is be a team that's had 2 weeks now to lick its chops from a very humiliating opening week loss, trying to redeem themselves, do it in a big way. So adding all those factors, I think it's safe to say Notre Dame will win this game, and I'll even go so far as to say they will cover the spread. I'm thinking at least 10 points, probably no more than 2 touchdowns.
All right. One last note. Mark D'Antonio is 3-4 as MSU head coach against Notre Dame, including a 1-3 mark in South Bend at Notre Dame Stadium. Now then to my Central Michigan Chippewas.
Touchdown, Central Michigan!
Cooper Rush, as the Central Michigan Chippewas come back home to Kelly Short Stadium on Saturday at 3 o'clock. It can only be televised on ESPN3 and the Watch ESPN app, or an alternative channel on your cable or satellite provider. But CMU is 2-0 after that surprising upset win over the 22nd ranked Oklahoma State Cowboys on the road.
I love it!
The UNLV Rebels, Nevada, Las Vegas, are 1-1. Looking at some statistics real quick. Total yards 455 for CMU compared to 415.5 for UNLV. That's a bunch. That's kind of close. Yards passing CMU 302.5, UNLV 188 flat. Yards rushing UNLV 227.5, CMU 152.5. They got to get the Chippewas have to get the running game going better. They got to make better running plays. UNLV has outrushed CMU offensively, as I just mentioned. Yards allowed. UNLV 375.5, CMU 232 flat. Passing yards allowed, UNLV 212, CMU 185, and rushing yards allowed, UNLV 163.5, CMU 47. UNLV has the 13-point spread. The over-under is 55, according to ESPN.com. Both teams are 2-0 against the spread. UNLV is 1-0 on the road against the spread. CMU is 1-0 at home against the spread. Cooper Rush, their quarterbacks, 47 of 69 pass completion percentage, 605 yards, 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 2 of them being crucial. But he got bailed out. He bailed himself out on that hail and lateral play on the untimed down last week at Oklahoma State, compared to Johnny Stanton of UNLV, 21 of 40, just 370 yards, 4 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Cooper Rush has the edge over Johnny Stanton. Rushing yards, Devin Spalding, 26 carries, 157 yards, 1 touchdown. And for UNLV, Lexington Thomas, 30 carries, 180 yards, 3 touchdowns. And of course, in the receiving yards department, Jesse Kroll, 10 receptions for 150 yards, and Devontae Boyd for UNLV, 9 receptions, 219 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Kroll hasn't scored a touchdown yet. So the matchup predictor, 86.7% say CMU will win, whereas the other 13.3% say UNLV would win. Looking over at CMUchippewas.com, CMUchippewas.com doesn't have a link to the preview on the game against the UNLV Rebels, unfortunately. So I don't have an injury report, I'm afraid. So I definitely apologize for that. I'd say prediction, CMU, they win and improve to 3-0. The score, I would say it's going to be a barn burner, like 45-31. See, UNLV's got plenty of offense. They're 2-0 against the spread as well. Both teams are 2-0 against the spread, but CMU's the home team. Plus they're going to have like a full house at Kelly Short Stadium in Mount Pleasant, not only celebrating that win over Oklahoma State, but considering that, the Chippewas have a lot more momentum on their side. If you think of it this way, but they can't get too cocky. If they stay focused on their on the task at hand, which they will, then they'll pull off a win and improve to 3-0. And I predict them to win 45-31.
This has a lot of elements of what you would call a classic hangover game. CMU, they're a week after getting a big win over a well-known opponent on the road in one of the most unpredictable and insane of fashions. Dealing with the afterglow of a win like that, even though it's at home, even though it gets the opponent, you have the spread of your 13-point favorite. I could see this being a bit of a hangover where they're not quite as focused. And UNLV, even though they played, a very, I guess you could say, a team that doesn't deserve to be on the field in Jacksonville State in week 1, they managed to put 63 points on the board. So I think UNLV, and of course, even though in the loss against UCLA, a much more credible team, they still managed to scrape up 21. So I can see this one being a little bit of a high-scoring affair. And even though I picked Central to win, I did actually see UNLV just getting under that 13-point spread. So I say CMU will win, but UNLV will cover.
All right. Sounds fair. So moving on to the Lions here.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
They play their first home game of 2016 in the regular season in the NFL in Week 2 against the Tennessee Titans. Kickoff is at 1 o'clock, of course, but it's going to be on CBS, not Fox, CBS. And we do have some key matchups here. Matthew Stafford, 31 of 39, 340 yards, 3 touchdowns. Marcus Mariota, 25 of 41, 271 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Stafford hasn't thrown an interception yet, so he's got a slight advantage over Mariota statistically. Amir Abdullah leads in rushing yards with 12 carries for 63 yards. DeMarco Murray for the Titans leads the Titans in rushing yards with 42 on 13 carries. Receiving yards, Tajay Sharp, 7 receptions, 76 yards, and Marvin Jones for the Lions, 4 receptions, 85 yards. So, although these three categories are even, these 3 matchups are even. This is this matchup on ESPN.com has a full injury report. 4 Lions questionable: Ezekiel Ansah, DeAndre Levy, Cole Wick, and Adarius Barnes. Ryan Spadola, wide receiver, is on injured reserve. For Tennessee, Derek Morgan is questionable, and Kendall Wright is out. Total yards, Lions have outgained the Titans 456 to 335. Yards allowed, the Lions lead in that category, 467 yards to Tennessee's 301 yards allowed. Lions defense did okay until that last drive by the Indianapolis Colts, finally scoring that touchdown, and the Colts from there got a lot of momentum going. Whereas the Lions defense simply faltered, especially in passing yards allowed, 385 in Week 1 at Indianapolis compared to Tennessee's 236. The Titans are 0-1. The Lions are 1-0, just barely. Just barely.
Probably should be 0-1.
Yeah, they should have been.
To be honest here.
Yeah, both teams should have been 0-1 in our views. So key matchups are pretty even. We cover the injury report. Ed, what are your key matchups?
My key matchups are, can the defensive line maintain a sustainable presence in terms of applying pressure throughout the game, not just 2 quarters or 1 quarter or 1 half. Talking about for a consistent basis throughout the entire length of the game. Can you put pressure on and just be absolute a nightmare to the young quarterback Mariota? Likewise, in turn with Mariota, no, he's not. He's not quite the strong passer as Andrew was, but still a unique athlete who can use the speed, use the zone read very well in open space. Be a consistent playmaker in certain instances. Now, I will say though that he will be without a weapon in Kendall Wright, so that could be a bit of a blow to Tennessee offensively. So that's one thing that could help the Lions out in their favor. But don't forget, they do have DeMarco Murray at running back. Now, granted, he did have a slow week last week, with only getting 42 yards, 13 carries, but still, he's quite a force to be reckoned with. He was absolute stud in Dallas for the Cowboys before, I believe, he switched over last year, switched all the way within the division, you could say, by playing with the Eagles. Now he's with the Titans. Could give the young developing Mariota a good complementary weapon to go with him in a young blossoming offense. So defensively, the Lions, it just comes down to their front four applying as much pressure as they can, because as we saw last week, if you give the opposing team any type of protection for the quarterback, this is a Lions team whose secondary is just flat out not that good. They're going to get torched. They're going to get gashed. And, granted, like I said, Mariota is not that good of a passer compared to Andrew Luck, but still a unique playmaker who can make broken plays out of nowhere, turn him into something, and really torch you with his own versatility. So he's definitely a wild card to look at for sure. This seems to be a winnable game for the Lions, though, because not to mention the fact that it is at home, and two, you have a much more seasoned and much more experienced quarterback in Stafford. Three, you have more versatility with your running backs, not just Abdullah, but also with Theo Riddick as well. So those three key elements, and on four also, better protection on the offensive line. That was one thing that didn't quite help out Tennessee last year, but also another thing that didn't help the Lions as well. But the Lions did show some improvement last week against Indy, giving up only one sack to Stafford. So it'll be interesting to see how they do this week against the Tennessee pass rush. We'll note, though, that Tennessee, like I mentioned, they had a pretty good shot to win last week. They just kept getting in their own way. So another key element to this would be the turnover battle. Tennessee, I believe, had 3 turnovers against the Vikings, which all of them, of course, would be costly. And a 9-point loss, 25-16 was the score. Or maybe it was 25-13, something like that. So Detroit, another key element for them if they want to win this game will be try to force as many takeaways as possible. Even if they don't get that part down, the fact that they do have a better experienced quarterback, seem to have better, in terms of potential-wise, a better defensive line to get at the quarterback more, and it's at home. Those things factor out nicely into a possible Lions win. The spread is -6. I'm inclined to pick Detroit here. Only reason that I think Tennessee might cover. I can see this being a close game where Jim Caldwell, unfortunately, makes boneheaded plays and calls and just questionable strategy and decisions that will put this team in a bad position. Like, for instance, last week, you could almost tell without that much trouble who made adjustments, what coach made adjustments at the second half, or at halftime rather, and which coach didn't. So that's another thing that could be working against Detroit. But Jeff Fisher might not be like that much better than Caldwell, believe it or not. So that's two intangibles right there that could essentially cancel each other out. So what I'm looking at is more than likely a Lions victory, especially at home. It's the home opener, so you want to not be too much of a falter against the home crowd. I want to say that Tennessee covers the spread, but that's just one thing I'm just not too certain about. I am going to take the safe bet, though, even though it's weird to say that and mention this team in the same breath. But I do think the Lions will win the game. Score, kind of hard to tell. Too wild to tell at this point.
I'm going to predict a close score. I'm thinking the Lions 31 and the Titans 27.
That seems like a reasonable score in terms of point differential. And I want to, with the Lions, with their offense, I think, it'd be interesting to see what test they face this week compared to an Indianapolis defense that I remember last week was coming into the game with injuries and had guys dropping off like flies throughout the game. So let's see what happens when they face a team that has more of their players. And let's say, for instance, they don't get hurt throughout the game. It'll be interesting to see how the team will offensively be able to adjust and move on the fly like that.
All right. Well, I think we pretty much covered everything. Ed, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
Basically, just stay tuned for what we have in store on Tuesday, because what we saw today from the Tigers was just gave us about 5 more reasons why Brad Austin should not be back next year as the team's manager. That's all I got to say about that.
Here's my final thought. People need to stop making excuses for why Ausmus may return next year. There is no excuse. The injuries are not going to cut it. Maybe it's because the front office has no guts, which I'm going to explain next Tuesday at 11. So that wraps up the football preview in the Mitten edition on episode 226 of the Michigan Sports Truth. Ed, thanks so much again for your help. I'll talk to you again on episode 227 Tuesday at 11 p.m. Eastern. Great job tonight.
Can't wait. Thanks, Taylor. Can't wait for it. I'm already looking forward to it.
All right. Before we sign off, I want to remind everyone to share this episode and our entire podcast on social media. Have their friends share that as well. And follow me on Spreaker as Taylor Phillips online at www.spreaker.com. Because I want to tell them that the Michigan Sports Truth podcast here on Spreaker is in search of local advertising sponsors. Same for the talk show feed. If anyone has a business that's interested in sponsoring this program, please email me at taylorgatorphillips14@yahoo.com or privately message me on Facebook or Twitter. For Ed Smith, I'm Taylor Phillips. If there's anything you fans want more of or less of on our podcast, please let us know. Follow us on Twitter at DT2Phillips and EdSmith313. TTFN, ta-ta for now.